City of Johannesburg Emergency Services confirms that 41 people are in hospital after a suspected gas explosion in the Johannesburg city centre earlier today. Newzroom Afrika's reporter Nqobile Madlala joins us live from Johannesburg city centre. Nqobile, good to speak to you this evening. We've obviously heard from the police, we've heard from the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi. We've also heard from the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg. Just bring us up to speed with what those reports were from that briefing moments ago.
Well, very important to know right now is that they're saying that they're still investigating the cause of what really happened and what caused the incident that took place in the CBD. And that is going to be taking place from now going forward. We know that the police have cordoned off some areas to ensure that there's safety. At the second time, we're hearing that there's an accommodation that is going to be taking care of people, that is going to be taking some of the people that needs to be evacuated. But of course that we are understanding is going to be in full swing by tomorrow. But from now till tomorrow, there's going to be, of course, that movement by the police to ensure that the area is cordoned off, that there is more investigations that are still ongoing. We saw the police that were on the ground, that were ensuring that there was some sort of safety in terms of making sure that people could also report. We saw them taking some reports around the area, but we're hearing from the Premier that there are various reports that are currently sitting with him. They're looking in terms of the pipeline, the sewer, the infrastructure that has been affected, and at the same time they're saying, and very important again, they're going to treat everyone equally to ensure that everyone is safe. But I want to bring in now the acting Minister of Police currently. And I think it's very important because we were in the CBD and we saw what was happening there. It's very important that everyone is safe. Perhaps just give us an idea or a rundown in terms of what the police are going to be doing from now till tomorrow.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. The police, first and foremost, are going to be working very closely with all the teams that have been put in place from a point of view of disaster management. It is for this reason that there is this setup where we are, because that's where everybody has to come to the center to bring in the different reports. However, from a safety and security point of view, the police have to be there 24/7 to make sure that, one, nobody also comes around to interfere with what has happened there, because that will enable the different technical teams to be able to do their work without any interference. Secondly, the movement of people is going to be controlled, because we don't want people to be hanging around in an area where we're not very sure of what might end up happening beyond what has happened now. So the responsibility of the police is to make sure that there's law and order, first and foremost, in the area, and second is to make sure that there's no interference within the area. Only the people who are supposed to be doing the technical research and checking what exactly has happened are going to be allowed in the area. But tomorrow, what's also going to be important is the direction of where citizens must go, because when we talk about cordoning the areas, then somebody must be able to give the necessary direction. This is where the province and the local government, the relevant structures, are going to communicate. We are hoping that by morning, people must be able to wake up to some plan that's going to be able to indicate to them. And those that direct traffic must be ready by tomorrow morning, very early in the morning, because Johannesburgers wake up very early to go to work. And so what is important now will be the briefing that will happen tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, because I think that briefing is going to give us a much more substantial report. One, what was the cause of this? Two, how long is it going to take for the city to fix and the province working with them? And three, the safety of the citizens is going to be a priority. That's why I was saying earlier on, the unfortunate part is that when you have such a disaster, you then have opportunists who think that this is the time for them to do things that are just not good for the citizens. The plea from us, from a safety point of view, is that citizens must also take responsibility of looking after each other, looking around and ensuring that they support each other at a time like this. The Department of Social Development obviously I am I'm acting Minister of Police, but the MEC for Social Development is here because the livelihood of the people is going to be very important. The mobilizing of whatever the people need is going to be important. But lastly, the mobilization of your NPOs and NGOs who normally step in to assist for us to look after the homeless, for us to look after those people who might be necessary to be evacuated. But lastly, the stability of the area is of major importance to us. And therefore, the people who are living in the area, they must not think about only today and say, where am I going to go to? Because if the safety is not assured, then people must agree to being moved if that is necessary.
And I was going to ask you about the social development part because we know that you're a minister in that portfolio. And I just want to ask also, there's a lot of trauma. We spoke to a gentleman who says that his car felt like somebody was pushing him, and you could just see that he was mostly dazed. We saw some of the families being pulled out. Some of them couldn't even walk. Where do you come in? How do you counsel these people? Where do you find them? What's going to happen?
One good thing is that all the relevant structures were here, including the councillors, because we also rely on the councillors to have the relevant information about the areas that they cover. The city of Johannesburg was here in full force, and I'm very happy with that. In fact, in the conversations that were here, you would have thought there's no different political party here. There is a government that has come here to make sure that we put our heads together, we find solutions to the problem. So, as I said earlier on, the responsibility of social development will be to get the details of who is where, starting with those who are in hospital, because those who are in hospital also, they need our support. And the health report that we got, as you saw that the Premier was up to date as to where are the people and at what categories they are there. The responsibility of social development is to get the list of who has been affected and how far have they been affected, and then put up a plan. Who are the people who need trauma counseling, and that's what we do through our social workers. But most importantly, if there's got to be evacuation, where are these people going to be taken to? Talk about the homeless. Unfortunately for us, and I will have to say this all the time because we think about them quickly when there's a disaster like this. We had homeless people during COVID. We're able to take them away and keep them somewhere during COVID. And I was hoping from a social development point of view that we would sustain that. But I know it's easier said because you remove some and put them away. Because of the social ills, they keep on coming back. One of the important things that I think we must do as a government, national, provincial, we must have a policy position and approach that says, what is the long-term plan in dealing with the homeless? Can we have a fixed policy so that they are not shuffled between local, provincial and national? We must just know that there is a policy that deals with them so that we don't only deal with the situation simply because there has been a disaster. They are also our citizens. We know what are the things that bring them out onto the street, and we must be humane enough to think about them all the time.
Thank you very much, Minister, for speaking to us. So there is a Minister of Social Development, but also an acting Minister of Police just speaking to us. But we do know that now the plan going forward, like she's talking about, the people that live on the streets, which would be homeless, they have already been accommodated somewhere. More accommodation is yet to come the next morning. We are hearing that there's going to be a lot of work that's going to happen on the ground to ensure that people are basically checked and profiled where they can be taken to. But we are also hearing that Josh Core is also going to be looking at the stability of these buildings to ensure safety. A lot of people that live in that area were saying that they're scared. They don't know where to go. They don't know what's going to happen because of what they saw, because of what they heard when that whole disaster took place. So it's going to be a big job, especially for those that had seen, to be able to be counseled and also to get that assistance.
Nqobile, before we let you go, just you've obviously given us a summary of where we are at now following that intervention by the authorities. But just bring us up to speed with what transpired this afternoon You know, what was the feeling like? What was the atmosphere that has led us to arrive where we are? Obviously, for the benefit of our viewers that would have joined us in the last hour.
Well, basically, we were in the CBD, and of course, from the people that we spoke to, they were saying that they heard sounds. Some of them said they saw some of the ground moving. Some of them said they got out of their homes and ran out because of what they were hearing, and they were not sure what was happening. But basically, the CBD of Johannesburg at this point has basically have a road which is Bree that has been broken in half. You find that there are holes, and in those holes, there currently water gushing out. There was a theory around the fact that some of the impact that took place there was because of illegal mining. We have been told now by the Premier that that is something that they are going to investigate. They cannot allude to it yet because they do not have proof in terms of that could be illegal mining. Second thing was that they thought that it could be a gas that had exploded, but we are now told that that's also still being investigated. Egoli Gas has been on the ground to ensure and to check what was happening. But we do know that there was a gas leak. There was a lot of strong smell if you're walking around the area. Very strong indeed. Some people had masks on. Some people were scared to even come out. But that remains to be an issue in the CBD. We were even told that based on the air, which direction it's going, then you get to smell it and it becomes stronger. There were some fears of radiation as well, but we do know that all of that is still being investigated. Joshko is a company that looks into the structures in Johannesburg, and we understand that that company is going to be making sure that they're going to be investigating and looking at just how strong or how viable it is for people to continue living in some of those buildings that were affected. Some of the buildings that we saw were already leaking water. So there's a lot of infrastructure damage that took place when there was that movement of the ground. So that becomes a major issue now. They're going to be looking at that. But we also know that there's some people that were in these buildings that are not just only traumatized from what they saw, but they're also scared to sleep tonight in those buildings. Most of them were outside. They were taking pictures. They had never seen something like that. We spoke to ER24, and the gentleman we spoke to, Fahim Esab, said in his 17 years of working, he has never seen what was happening in the CBD. So it's total trauma for a lot of people, but we do know that EMS swooped in to make sure that they could assist some people on the ground. We do understand that at this point, there's about 41 people that have been affected, with my understanding that 2 people that are critical at this point. We heard from ER as well that they had rescued about 15 people. Earlier on, the Premier had seen just about 9 people. So there is an increase of the number if you look at the fact that it started from 9, 15, and now it's going to 41. So there's a question in terms of, has everyone been rescued at this point? So there's more teams that are still on the ground. That's what's currently happening in the CBD of Johannesburg.
Nqobile Madlala, appreciate your time, and she's coming to us from the CBD of Johannesburg following that what is believed to be an explosion of sorts earlier on today. Visuals that we saw earlier of cars strewn across Bree Street, which literally was ripped, if you would, cars on their sides, cars turned upside down, and from what we understand, no deaths have been reported, luckily, but 41 people injured and 2 of them